Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 54th installment of the Torah portion of the week. We're starting at the beginning again as we just finished Simchas Torah, holiday of celebrating finishing the Torah. So we're holding now by the first Parsha, Parshas Bereishis, talks about creation of the world, creation of everything in the world, animals, plants, man, the story of Adam and Eve, and up until Noah, before the flood. So it covers quite a bit of ground. One thing that I wanted to speak about in the Parsha is about the creation of man. So the Torah here says, chapter 1, verse 26, Torah says, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, over the animals, the whole earth, and every creeping thing creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his image, the image of God, created him, male and female, he created them. Again, chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. So God says, let us make man in our image. Right? It's a little bit of a problem. Why does it say in the plural? Right? It's an obvious question. Who's he talking to? Right? Who is God speaking to? So Rashi there says, God is speaking to the heavenly hosts, showing God's humility, because he's talking to, creatures, spiritual beings that are less than him, because he created them. So he's showing humility by taking counsel with them. Right? The whole question, as Talmud brings out, is it better for man to be created or not be created? Right? The whole discussion there. But God says, let us make man in our image. So again, showing his humility by speaking to the heavenly court about the creation of man. So man is the only being that has part godliness and a physical body. So man was created from the four corners of the earth. God takes the dust of the four corners of the earth, forms man, but he breathed into him the soul of life. What is the soul of life? The Aramaic translation says it's called a ruach memalelo. It is the ability to speak, not just to speak, because animals also speak. We just don't understand them unless we play Dr. Dolittle, but most of us don't, so we don't know necessarily what the animals say, even though they do have their own language. Nonetheless, when the Aramaic translation says that we have the ability to speak, it means to reason, to make decisions. We can make good decisions, can make bad decisions that we're going to see shortly. So God needed a creature, a being in this world that has the ability to go towards ruchnius, towards spirituality, while being in the physical world. Now, obviously, that's not an easy thing, because there's an obvious conflict between body and soul. And that's the difference between when man ate from the tree of knowledge and before, because once he ate from the tree of knowledge, he put evil inside of himself. He gave himself the ability to either choose good or evil. It's a constant 24/7, or maybe 24/6, even on Shabbos. I guess you have that evil inclination as well. So you have a constant struggle between body and soul. And the body wants to go after the physical, soul wants to go after the spiritual. So there's this constant fight. But again, the point I want to make here is God created a being that has the ability to go towards spirituality, while at the same time he's part of the physical world. Because the Torah says he's going to be made in our image. They'll rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky. They'll have dominion over the world, right, over the animals. So it's brought down. You can look at man in one of two ways. That they're really the pinnacle of creation. In other words, the whole purpose of creation is for the sake of man and the creation of man. So man comes at the end. Or you could say that man, if he only goes after his physical desires, he's no better than the animals. And look, the animals were created before him. So he's no better. So it can make man look pretty humble, saying that he's no better than an animal if he doesn't act according to where his spiritual side should take him. Comes along the Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah was written by Rameir Simcha of Dvinsk. He was one of the great leading rabbis of the 20th century, late 1800s early 1900s, and he was a tremendous rabbi in Eastern Europe, and he wrote a famous work called Meshech Chochmah, which is a commentary. It's commentary on the Torah. So the Meshech Chochmah here says that God gave man free will, and he didn't push man in one direction or the other to choose either one way or the other. What he did was he gave him free choice. He can do what he wants. If he wants to go one way, go one way. If he wants to go the other way, go the other way. Now, it's a hard thing to understand. The Meshech Chochmah says, according to the Rambam, that the Rambam says that it's extremely difficult to understand how this works. In other words, God breathed in the spirit of life, but nonetheless, he doesn't force man to go in either direction. Could he? Of course. God can do anything, right? But he's not going to force him to go in either direction, either for good or for bad, because he wants to give him free will. Even though he could choose to do terrible things, right? He's still going to give him free will. But the Rambam says it's hard to fathom how all this works, because really it comes from God Himself. Exactly how God puts that into man and gives him the choice, right? It's very hard to understand, but it seems like it is a decree, and again, we can choose to go one way or the other. Therefore, that's why it says, "Let us make man in our image." Right? In our image, he's got the spiritual choice, he's got the physical choice, right? To go one way or the other. So the Torah explains that when the Torah says, "Let us make man in our image," what does it really mean? It means it's speaking the language of man. Meaning, the way we normally speak, that He gives us the ability to choose, and that we shouldn't be forced to go in one direction or the other. Right? Our thoughts are our own, to do good, to do bad. Even to do things against God's will, and that are not what He wants us to do. So, we have to understand what this means. Free will is given to us by God. Now, obviously, things changed after the sin of Adam and Eve of eating from the tree. And the reason it changes is because before the sin, so they understood that if they would walk, if they walk in the forest and there's a big hole, it's 500 feet deep and they fall into it, they understand that they could get seriously hurt. They understood there was good and there was things that were bad, and to stay away from the bad. Once they ate from the tree, the evil, so to speak, entered them. So Adam thought, if I eat from the tree, every time I do the right thing, exponentially, I'll get reward. And if I do the wrong thing, okay, I'll get punished. But the reward is much greater. So if the reward is much greater, if it's much greater, then it's worth it. Although God said that's not what I created the world for. And the Talmud says that God calls him a heretic. Calls him a heretic because that wasn't the purpose of what creation was for. Nonetheless, that's not the topic for now. The issue at hand is free will. So the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto in Derech Hashem, states clearly that each soul, each person in this world has a specific purpose. Now that purpose, we don't necessarily know what it is, but every soul has a specific purpose, what it's doing in this world. Now, when a person's born, he's born against his will, right? He comes into this world because, as is brought down, God cajoles the soul to go into the body. The soul would rather stay upstairs, basking in God's glory, but God spits it into a body. And even though the soul doesn't necessarily want to come down, nonetheless, God puts it in the body. So at the same time, once it's in the body, it's given certain parents. It's given certain siblings, or maybe it doesn't have siblings, right? It's given, certain socioeconomic status There are all these different factors that go on that God says, okay, I'm going to give you a message. I'm going to send you on a mission. You're going to go into this body, and you're going to go through this, that, and the other thing, based on where you grow up and other things that occur. Some people may have it easier. They grow up with wealth. Some people have it harder. Some people may have wealth and lose it, gain it back. Some people may stay poor their whole lives. It depends on the situation of the soul, what it goes through, and what its purpose is. Now, when the soul is in the body, the soul, according to Kabbalah, will not remember what it's doing here, will not remember anything previously, but it has a purpose. It has a mission. So, I've heard a number of times people say that, we don't really know what our purpose is, but if we really think hard enough, we may be able to figure it out. What can we figure out? Think about the thing that is most hard for you to do. What is the hardest thing for you to do? In other words, you would rather take glass and splice up your body than do it. For some people it may be to show gratitude towards others. Other people it may be, extremely difficult to admit they're wrong. For other people it may be, working on anger. That might be the hardest thing. Just get angry easily. Whatever it is, whatever the hardest thing is, it could be, not guaranteed, it could be that's what you're doing here in order to fix. So, God puts you in a certain situation. Again, certain siblings, certain socioeconomic status, whatever the case is. But He gives you free choice. He gives you the ability either to go right, right, or left. You can go either way. So if you go either way, there are going to be repercussions. If I do the right thing, I make my soul stronger. If I do the wrong thing, I make it weaker. And there are ramifications for what I do because God takes all this into consideration. It's like the Matrix. Everything is connected. So if I do something wrong, everything is affected. How it's affected, so God judges it where you're holding right now, how it may affect your kids, future generations, your spouse, all these different things, God takes into account, and then whatever you do, God judges it at that point. So, the Talmud tells us wherever a person wants to go, God is not going to stop them. If a person wants to go to the side of good, no problem. God will allow you to do it. Maybe it won't make it easy, but He'll allow you to do it. If you want to go towards the side of bad, right? You want to go to the dark side. Will God stop you? No. He's not going to stop you. He will allow it to happen. Now, evil is not going to run rampant. Evil has a boundary. When God doesn't need this person anymore to do what He needs to do, God takes him out of this world. So, let's get back to the original thing, though. The original idea is free will. Now, there's an obvious question. And the obvious question is that will really free? In other words, can I do whatever I want when I want? Simple answer, we would say, why not? Is anyone pointing a gun to our head right now? Jew decides wants to go out, eat a ham sandwich. Anyone going to stop him? Not necessarily. He could go. He can go and do what he wants. So, there will be repercussions, certainly for what he does, but he's not going to be stopped. Evil is something different. God will stop it, He'll let it go up to a point. When He sees He doesn't, that it's finished, whatever that means, then He stops it. It can't run rampant forever. It has a certain amount of time, and then God says, okay, fine. I'm going to take over, I'm going to stop it, and He stops it. How that works, why He does what He does, so, that we can't answer. That we don't know. Right? God has to do what He has to do, and we have to do what we have to do. But the question at hand is our will really that free? Meaning, I don't even know if that's a legitimate statement. Do we have free will? Right? Do we really have free will? So the answer is, sort of. See, isn't that a great rabbinical answer? Is 2 and 2 4? Yeah, sometimes. In physics, not always. What's the answer? Maybe. Gotta love that. Anyway, why do I say that? Sort of. The reason is that let's think about what we go through on a daily basis. So we get up in the morning. We have jobs, hopefully, or we don't have jobs, looking for jobs, trying to survive. And we go through different things during the day. We have to eat, take care of our body, keep ourselves healthy, etc., etc. A lot of things to do. Now, on any given day, anything can happen. Weather could change. A person could have a problem with his car, could have a problem with something within his house. Something could happen on that day that is not in their control. Now you might say, how many things are really in our control? Well, that's a good question. So I would venture to say, probably not many. Again, are we robots? We're for sure not robots. We can make whatever decision we want, but keep in mind, whatever situation we're thrown in is not necessarily because we willed it. Right? It's a pretty, it's a pretty harsh statement. Why not? So, some things that we do will absolutely have repercussions. All right, for better or for worse. We control our own destiny in that sense. We can choose to do this, do that, and then there'll be repercussions. There'll be ramifications for what we've done. As we mentioned before, it's like the Matrix. Everything's connected. Whatever I do has an effect on my town, on my city. Right? In the world, our actions matter, which we've spoken about a number of times. But the reality is that even though I have free will to do what I want, we're put in situations not necessarily by our choice. It's a divine choice. That means that if a certain thing happens, it's not because I wanted it to happen. Not because I willed it to happen. I happened to do something and something else came about and happened. I didn't choose it. I didn't want it. I wasn't interested in it. God thought otherwise. So there are many times that God will make a decree and He'll make it happen against my will. So you might say, okay, if that's true, let's just say for argument's sake that's true. How in the world do I stop it? How can I stop that? Answer is you can't. Sorry. There's no way to stop it. We are not in control. Most people don't want to hear that, and it makes people feel uncomfortable. Because when we say that you're not in control, that means that you're subject to maybe the whims of the world. So if we live again, for argument's sake, we're living in a God-driven world. Meaning that God runs the world, it's just we don't see how things interact through Him because He is tremendously hidden. Right? It's hiddenness within hiddenness. It's very hard. Almost impossible to try and fathom what God is doing and why. But if we understand that He runs the world, and we'll cut Him some slack and say that He's probably doing a pretty good job. Oh, the way He's run the world, He doesn't need my agreement. I'm not going to pat Him on the back and say, God, you're doing a great job over the years. Nonetheless, He's doing what He needs to do. And we need to do what we need to do, but it doesn't mean that when we see God doing what He needs to do, that we understand it. Okay. So if we take that premise, we have to remember that God has certain goals. He has certain things He wants done. And He's got messengers to do them. So it is a little bit hard to take from our mind and put in our heart, but we'll try and do it anyway. The idea is if something happens, someone causes us damage. What's the Torah outlook? Let's say someone causes us to lose money. Someone caused us to lose money, it means that that money was destined not to be ours. God giveth, God taketh away. We weren't supposed to have it. You could lose it in any number of ways. Let's say a person has a problem with a car, with a washing machine, other things. That money wasn't supposed to make. He's supposed to lose it. What happens if someone causes damage? Let's say we didn't do it ourselves. If we did it ourselves, well, we got no one to blame except ourselves. But let's say someone else did it. Someone else causes us damage. Now, what's the Torah outlook? The Torah outlook is that damage had to be done. It had to be done to me. Why? Wake up call. Let's just say it's a wake up call. So what's the person going to do? Person who caused the damage, you're going to yell and scream and jump up and down and why'd you do this? You know, you stupid lowlife, this, that. You know, you caused me damage. Even the guy apologized, said, listen, I didn't mean it, I'm so sorry. But he caused damage. So at the end of the day, you're upset. You lost money, you lost time, aggravation, right? Who doesn't have aggravation today? Everyone's got some level of aggravation. But what do? We blame him. Now, is it his fault? Yeah, he caused the damage. But the reality is, God sent him to cause the damage as a messenger. Did he act out of his own free will? Yes. Is he a robot? Hell no. But it was orchestrated in such a way, he had to be the one to do it. Why? Like I always say, if I knew half these answers, I wouldn't be doing these videos. I'd be world famous. We don't know why. But the Torah outlook is, I deserve this damage to be done. For any number of reasons. We may never figure it out, and it doesn't matter. God wants us to wake up. We don't wake up, so God can cause us damage. Cause us physical damage. Cause us sickness, God forbid. All these things to wake us up. In other words, if we see things around us doesn't wake us up, God will hit us. Either in the pocket, in our goof, in our bodies. There's a wake-up call. But we may not get the message. Because we're so busy being upset and yelling and screaming and ranting and raving. Look what this guy did, and he should have paid attention, and he was negligent and all this. It's all true. Right? It may all be true. But at the end of the day, I was supposed to have damage caused to me. This guy is just the conduit. He's just the messenger. So, we shouldn't look at it, obviously we can be upset with what he did, but the reality is someone sent him to do it. Didn't put a gun to his head, but he was the messenger. Kind of like the parable with a person hitting a dog with a stick, right? I don't advocate hitting a dog with a stick. Just pointing out, you hit a dog with a stick, who does the dog go after? Dog doesn't have any brains, just programmed DNA, goes after the stick. So you say, you stupid mutt, why are you going after the stick? I'm the one who hit you. So you should be going after me. Dog doesn't understand that. His brain is tiny. Can't fathom that. He goes after the stick. But the reality is, forget the stick. He should be attacking you. So us was the same way. If that person's a stick, and that person whacks us, what are we yelling and screaming at him? Who sent him? You can say, come on. He sent himself. Yeah, but keep in mind, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that caused this person to do what he did. So you're going to say he was negligent, wasn't paying attention, right? What happened? Let's say a few days before, he didn't sleep well, got in a fight with his wife or his kids. He was down. Wasn't thinking straight. We have ups and downs all the time. And he wasn't paying attention because he was distracted. And the person all of a sudden get distracted and, it just happens, in a moment's notice and then boom, it happens. No, it happens over time. Person, let's say, been up for 36 straight hours. Right, took a cat nap here, cat nap there, falls asleep at the wheel, smashes into someone else. Luckily doesn't kill anybody, but, it happened over time more than just, he fell asleep at the wheel. He didn't have, this disease where people can fall asleep at the drop of a hat. I forget what it's called. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. But there were things leading up to that. So, the answer is, things do not happen in a vacuum. Things do not happen, all of a sudden, at once, without other things happening before it. There are steps before that. If God forbid, we've seen, terrorist attacks or heard about terrorist attacks. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes months of planning, right? Day after day, night after night, and then they figure out the best time to do it. Sometimes they're successful. Thank God a lot of times they're not. But be that as it may, it takes a lot of time. There are a lot of events that go into it, one thing after another. It's not going to take a day's notice to do it. It's not going to take a week. It's going to take months. Scouting out the area, getting the material, making sure everything's in place. It takes a long time. So if you want to talk about something like that, like a terrorist attack, I can understand. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of time, a lot of effort. But everyday life, the Ramchal says, is no different. Because God's orchestrated all these things according to the matrix. Right? Because everything's interconnected. So this action, okay, is going to cause this reaction, it's going to cause this, is that, and then all these different things are going to happen, and how you're going to be affected, someone else is going to be affected, the world's going to be affected, all these different things. All these different things are going to go on, and God's going to put them all together. That's pretty amazing. You think about, population of billions of people in the world, and every split second somebody does something, and someone thinks something, etc. God's putting all this into motion. So nothing happens for no reason. It's all calculated. Problem is, we're not given any information here. We don't know how it all works. Right? We don't see how it works. So the Ramchal explains all these different things are going on behind the scenes. He doesn't say what's going through God's mind, how he's going to judge it, whatever. In a certain sense, he talks about people that are righteous, people that are totally evil. And a person's totally evil will have it easier in this world, so he won't have any portion of the world to come. And people that are righteous, even if they make a small mistake, they'll pay for it severely, so they can have a bigger portion of the world to come. They'll suffer a little bit here, and they won't have any suffering in the next world. Yeah, he discusses that. But the more important thing, of all that, is all the background that goes into it. And how all these forces play a role. And how our thoughts are changed by all kinds of different things. By the weather, by what we see, by what we hear, by what someone tells us, how well we slept, we didn't sleep, whatever. All these things have an effect. It affects the body, it affects the mind, it affects the soul, it affects what we do. Now, if that's all true, do we have free will or not? I'm in a funny mood tonight. Do we have free will or not? So, again, everyone should say and jump up and down and scream, of course we have free will. I'm not a robot. No one's putting a gun to my head to do anything. But if we think of the things that we do, and what happened a few days before, and how it manifests itself later, because of what I did, or what I thought, or how things build one on the other, yeah, it's based on my action. But it's only because I'm reacting to other things, or I'm thinking other things, or other things are affecting me, or whatever the case is. That means we're not in total control. Just the opposite. Doesn't seem like we have much control at all. But we do have control. It's just limited. It comes on the Meshech Chochmah. And the Meshech Chochmah says, God in His infinite wisdom, however this works, He gave us a soul. He created us. He gave us a spiritual side like angels. Except, we're put in a physical body. So take spiritual entity, go into physical body. The physical body should explode because of the spiritual power of the soul. The Ramchal says it doesn't because it's trapped. It's in an opaque box, like kryptonite. Can't get near it. But it can be strengthened by the mitzvahs that we do. It can be weakened by the transgressions that we do, by going only after the body. Very true. Very, very true. Nonetheless, God puts that soul in, and He says, okay, I really want you to come close to me. The goal is spirituality. Say spirituality, well, I mean a physical body. All they want to do is eat ice cream and go to ball games. And watch movies, right? Why not? It's fun. But you see, the more you give into that, the Ramchal says, the more you eat away your body, your soul. It weakens it, it weakens it, it weakens it. So what does God say? But I gave you a soul. It says, you idiot, you have a soul. You have the ability to come close to me. I gave you a whole month of Elul to be introspective. I gave you 2 days of Rosh Hashanah to hear that shofar, that you should want to change. And then you have the 10 days of repentance to come even closer. Then you have the ultimate day. You have Yom Kippur. Atonement. Tshuva. Change. And then God says, once you've gone through all that, I give you the mitzvah of Sukkah. I give you the mitzvah of a sukkah. Of going out from your home, going into your flabby shed. Right? Your 4 walls or 3.5 walls with the thatch on top. God says, now you're in my world. I gave you atonement, the ability to atone. I gave you judgment. Now I want you to understand, you're living in a flimsy world. It's temporary. So God's going to say, after 120 years, we should never hear this. None of us should ever hear this. God's going to say, I gave you a pure soul. What did you do? You killed it. You think, come on, I just want to have a little fun in this world. God says, fun? I didn't create this world for fun. Yeah, I got all these other forces going on and all these different things, but you're trapped in this world. I know that. I created it. But God says, as the Talmud tells us, that there's an antidote. God created the evil inclination, gave us an antidote. I like that word, antidote. He gave us the antidote. What's the antidote? Torah. God says, go sit in that sukkah, as long as it's not raining, not too cold or too hot. Sit in the sukkah, remember. Put a white sheet all the way around. Remember the Ananei HaKavod. Remember my clouds of glory that sustained you in the desert, gave you food, gave you clothing. Your sandals never wore out. They had body odor. Hard to imagine in a desert. For 40 years, God took care of us. So we put up the white sheet. We put up the remembrance for Ananei HaKavod. That's the intention when you make Kiddush. One of the intentions when you make Kiddush, first night of Sukkot, is we remember the Ananei HaKavod. We remember God's glory. The glory of the cloud that took care of us. We also have to have in mind sitting in the sukkah, right? When you make Kiddush, you say, you make the blessing of sitting in the sukkah. Well, what are you sitting in the sukkah for? It's 50 degrees. Kind of cold. I'm not sitting in the sukkah for any reason except for the mitzvah. Because if we had sukkahs in the summer, you might look like you're going there for shade. Can't go there for shade. Right? That's not what the purpose is. That's why it's in the fall. Some places already snow. So obviously you're doing it for the mitzvah. No person in their right mind is going to sit in the sukkah when it's 20 degrees. Say, boy, it's so nice and warm in here. Let's go to the sukkah. Won't make any sense. What are you, a masochist or an idiot? Both. Nonetheless, God says, remember, I created this world. But this world is temporary. That's why on Shabbos, on the intermediate days of Sukkot, on Shabbos, there's a custom to read the book of Koheles. Right? The book of Ecclesiastes, who King Solomon wrote. Go through it from beginning to end. What does he say? He says, I was former king of Yerushalayim. Everything is Hevel. Everything is nothingness. Everything is vanity. The only true thing is Torah. And he goes through, and he says, I searched out all the world. I went through all the philosophies. But the only thing I found that was true is Torah. That's why we read it, to remember. That's why we read it on Sukkot. To remember that the purpose of this world is that it's temporary. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that this world is like a prose door, it's like a corridor to the world to come. Because what's the purpose? Spirituality. If I tap into it enough, I do enough right things, God's going to give me a portion of the world to come. If I don't, bad news. You might have to come back, be reincarnated, get fixed up again. Right? This day and age, probably not going to happen. I've already come back a few times, our soul. So, this is it. Going to make the most of it. So God says we're going to create man in our image. We're going to give him a shake. As my father, Al Shalom, would say, he's got a shake. He's got a chance. Right? He's got a chance to make it in this world spiritually. Physically, we don't care because this world is fantasy. This world is make-believe. But he's got the ability to tap into spirituality. How does he do it? Football! No, just kidding. Torah! That's the only way. And he's giving you the ability to tap in. And he says, I gave you that spiritual soul. You want to choose the wrong way? Okay. Realize you're going to pay a price. I'm not going to stop you. You want to choose the right way? Okay, that's good. Not going to make it so easy, but that's good. So it's an amazing thing. God gives you the ability to choose. I mean, how does this work? That's what the Meshech Chochmah asks. How in God's wisdom does this work at all? That he breathes the spirit of life into us, gives us his spiritual soul, and he still gives you the ability to spit at him in the face. To go against him. To rebel. Mind-boggling. Does he know man could possibly fail? He knows everything, of course. That's why at the end of Genesis, right before Parshas Noah, at the end of Parshas Bereishis, Torah says, the Torah says that God saw the wickedness of man is upon the earth, chapter 6, verse 5, that every part of the thoughts of his heart were evil. They're always evil. And God reconsidered having made man on the earth and was sad. What does that mean? How can he be sad? Doesn't God know the thoughts of man? One of the 13 principles of faith. Obviously he knows it. How can he change his mind? God knows the future. God knows what man is capable of. All of a sudden, now he's going to say, I regret. How can I have regret? That's as if to say, and people will try to bring this as a proof, because that's why you need an oral tradition here. Otherwise, this is a good question. And that is, see, God can make mistakes. God's fallible. Well, we know God is perfect. God is absolute. Can't make mistakes. You're going to say, but the Torah says, I reconsidered. That means I made a mistake. Oops. That's like saying oops. Can God say oops? No. Because God is absolute. Can't say oops. Right? The one thing, if a person, God forbid, has an operation, right? You see all these, doctors, their faces covered. Last thing is you go under. Anesthesia's taking effect. You don't want to hear, oops. That's why their faces are covered, because you can't see who's doing what. Right? That you don't want to hear. God cannot say oops. So you say, okay, so what does the Torah mean? So Rashi over there says that he gives a parable. He says, or he actually brings down from a Medrash, that the Medrash says that, a non-Jew asks one of the rabbis this question. If you say God is perfect, says he reconsiders. It looks like he made a mistake. So the rabbi answers him by saying the following. He says, what happens when you have a child? He says, what do you mean? I make a big party. It's a tremendous joy if the child's healthy, if he's not so healthy, whatever. You have a child, tremendous simcha, tremendous joy. So the rabbi tells him, but don't you know, at the end of the day, that child's going to die. Everybody dies. Right? I'm sorry to be the burden of bad news, but, Judaism does not believe in death. Death occurred because Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. There wasn't supposed to be death, but, sorry to say, everyone is going to die. So the rabbi says, if you know your son's going to die, or your daughter's going to die, why are you having a party? Why are you making such a big celebration, you idiot? You're just going to die. Whether it's, in 20 years, in 40 years, in 80 years, they're going to go into the ground. What are you so happy about? So, the non-Jew answers, and he says, you know what? He says, you're right. I know he's going to die. And eventually he'll die. But what I also know is, he's just been born. So, when he's born, I'm happy that he's born, even though I know in the end he's going to die. In the future. Way, way in the future. Hopefully. So that's the answer. God knows that man can make mistakes. God doesn't want man to make mistakes. He wants him to stay on the straight and narrow path. At the same time, he knows. He knows what the future is going to bring. So in that, he has remorse. He has remorse that he doesn't want to see them sin. Not they made a mistake. God doesn't make mistakes. He's absolute. Doesn't make mistakes. Remorse doesn't mean that he made a mistake. Remorse here means it's like a big sigh. Right? Or, as they say in years, like a big fetch. He gives a big fetch and, a terrible thing. Well, don't you know he's going to do it? Don't you know that your offspring, or not offspring, but you created mankind? Don't you know mankind's going to do this? Or have the potential? Of course God knows that. It's not a chiddush, it's not a novelty. Of course he knows. Doesn't mean that he's not sad about it. It doesn't mean that he says, I blew it. Man can also reach incredible heights. They can also be tzaddikim. They can be totally righteous. If they want to be. You have to work hard. It takes a lot of effort. Evil inclination doesn't want you to. It takes tremendous effort. But we have the ability. We have the ability to reach whatever potential that we have. But, again, we're given this mission. And God throws all these things at us. And whatever we do is going to have ramifications. It's going to have repercussions. But it's based on what we do, even though what we do seems to be limited. Because we can move and do things and whatever, but there are a lot of other things, as we mentioned before, that go on behind the scenes that make what happens happen. I'm going to give one example. Think however many people see this video. And each person will have their own story of how they got to it. I mean, some may come to the same conclusion. Oh, we're here to suffer, so they watch it. They want to suffer some more. So to get off free in the next world. Well, that could be. And so you should thank me. I'm helping you. Helping you in the process. Even so, most people are not going to have the same story. And how they got there, they're going to have events that led in their lives that caused them to do this, to do that, to the other thing. Oh, then they came in contact, then they saw this. But everyone's different. Maybe some are similar. Maybe there are similar stories. Could be. But in general, no one's going to have the same story of exactly how they got to where they are. How they had to suffer through, watching these videos or classes or whatever. It's different. But see, that's the amazing thing. Because each person got to it, however they got to it, in a million different ways. I mean, if I had a million hits, yeah. So, a million different ways people came. That's nothing short of incredible. So, everyone's going to have a different story, or maybe they'll be similar somewhat, but they're all going to be different. Because all these other events led them to this. So one thing, another thing, this, that. But it's all connected in the end. Some get there, some don't get there. But what I want to leave you with is that we have all these things that go on behind the scenes that we don't see at all. And we don't know what led to this, what led to that, what led to something else until something happens. Sometimes we do, most times we don't. But when we do and we see sort of like a daisy chain, one thing to another, to another, to another, and then you get to this point, say, wow, look at that. Right? We don't normally get that moment. Maybe once, few times. But some people never get to see that. How it all fits together. And we're not necessarily supposed to see it. If we do see it, then, our eyes are being open for whatever reason that God wants to. But what we see in this world and what affects us are many things, again, makes people feel uncomfortable, are many things that we have absolutely no control over. We think we do, the reality is we don't. And the question is, how are we going to react? So you're going to say, well, is that predestination? No. We make our own destiny. What we do. We're going to say, how do we do that? Because all the other forces are acting and we're going to either act or react. Okay. We make our decisions and there are reactions and ramifications based on other things as well. True. But at the end of the day, we make the bed we lie in. God's not going to say, see, I forced you to do this. He didn't. No, he didn't. Look at the Rambam in the laws of repentance. The only person he forced to do that was Pharaoh. Took away his free will. Everyone else has free will. Again, maybe limited, but we still have it. We can choose to do good or do bad. You're going to say, well, if God puts all these forces in and forces our hand, of course how can I do, bad or good? I'll do what God wants me to do. That's not true. God can stack the deck against you. You can still do good. Or you could do bad. It's your choice. But don't think that, I have the ability to do whatever I want. That's not true. It's limited. But there are many other things going on that we don't see. So I want to remind people tonight, 8 o'clock Central Time, I'm doing a live video on Tanakh Talk, TENAKTALK.com. It will be live, controversial issues number 6 on oral tradition. I think it should be another hot topic. I want to mention also I give conversion classes. You can take a look at Beyond Orthodox Conversion on Facebook. You can look at Beyond Noahides. Also give classes to Noahides. And I also give a class intro to Kabbalah based on the book Derech Hashem, The Way of God. Speak about prophecy, reincarnation, why God created the world, purpose of man, purpose of evil, divine providence, how it all works. Anyone interested can you also take a look at my blog, orthodoxconversion.com. Anyone wants to contact me, feel free to contact me at rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Everyone have a great Shabbos.